Howdy folks, this is Tony here, and I'm going to be debunking a video called The American Presidential Election of 2024 by a Mr. Beat channel. Now, Mr. Beat likes to purport himself as a more objectively minded, reasonably minded person who's just taking an objective look at the facts. He likes to present himself as sort of a history teacher of sorts. But in this video, basically, he has a naked bias towards the left. He's left-wing. In fact, so left-wing that I would go so far as to say he has TDS. Now, I was going to be merciful and just list a short rebuttal, give a short list of rebuttals in this video, but I decided we're going to go all in. I am going to be debunking the entire video. Now, he does speak kind of slowly, so I'm going to speed up the pace of the video a bit, and I'm going to take periodic breaks to stop and debunk aspects of this video, especially that I think show his left-wing bias, and then I'm also going to show you a comment that I made and his TDS-induced response. So let's begin.
Beat presents Presidential Elections in American History.
The 60th presidential election in American history took place on November 5th, 2024. Never before had so many Americans been so confidently wrong about so many things. This was the misinformation age.
Now, he's stating that Americans are confidently wrong. Now, let's see, does he actually give examples of that?
When facts no longer mattered, as it was so easy to find plenty of evidence that backed up your feelings. And the COVID-19 pandemic had only made all this worse. Just like the previous president, Donald Trump, Joe Biden was very unpopular and old. Yeah, really old. One of his first major accomplishments, withdrawing all remaining troops in Afghanistan, didn't go so well. By the end of his first year...
Oh, why didn't it go so well? It did not go so well because he left literal terrorists who intend to kill Americans and others that don't agree with them. He left those individuals billions of dollars worth of weapons. So let's not gloss over that and say, oh, it didn't go so well. Why? Because he literally gave top-grade military equipment to terrorists. That's why it did not go so well.
In office, inflation dramatically went up. The next year, prices continued to skyrocket. It was the worst inflation in more than 40 years. Not only that, things got chaotic at the southern border with Mexico as more undocumented immigrants entered the country.
He did not call them properly what they are, which is illegal alien invaders. Look at the images of the caravans. You see hundreds of military-aged men from foreign countries marching up to our border, waving the flag of their country of origin. In any other context in human history, this would clearly be seen as an alien invasion, be seen as an act of war, which is what it is. He glosses over the issue of immigration, of illegal immigration, and he does not mention Tren de Aragua. He does not mention the fentanyl crisis. He does not mention the gangs taking over apartment complexes in Colorado and in other places. He does not mention the influx of immigrants, illegal immigrants, in New York and Chicago who are living in luxury hotels and whatnot, and who are using taxpayer dollars. He just says, oh, things got crazy at the border. Notice he tries to obfuscate and not place the blame directly where it goes, which was at the feet of the Biden-Harris administration for letting these people in. He glosses over that. Let's continue.
Raising new concerns about border security and more bad stuff getting into the country. Heck,
more bad stuff. Why don't you actually elaborate on that? But let's continue.
The entire world got more chaotic after Russia invaded Ukraine and after Hamas and other Palestinian militants from the Gaza Strip attacked Israel, ultimately leading to the Gaza War. Many Americans criticized Biden for stirring things up further by pushing for aid to both Ukraine and Israel.
Brandon, you also told me, as you can hear the chants from the crowd, let's go, Brandon.
Yeah, as it turns out, they were not saying, let's go, Brandon, but that became a not-so-sneaky way of expressing hate of Joe Biden. Soon, the meme was everywhere, but some Biden supporters eventually co-opted it to praise him. The meme Dark Brandon specifically praised Biden when he apparently went even further to the left politically. Speaking of which, Biden arguably pushed the country further left more so than any president since Richard Nixon.
See, notice he's trying to make an equation between, or an equivalence between Democrats and Republicans, because again, Nixon was a Republican, and he's going to here try to be sarcastic about how far to the left Joe Biden was.
By passing important laws like the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Respect for Marriage Act.
Now, notice he mentions legislation that Biden signed. Now, I will grant this. The Respect for Marriage Act did push the country far to the left because it was essentially a codification of Obergefell v. Hodges, which can objectively be seen as an attack on Christian values and an attack on the nuclear family that God created. That's pretty naked. But the other bills that he signed, he tries to say, oh, the country was pulled far to the left with the Inflation Reduction Act, etc. He's saying it almost in a sarcastic manner, but all of those bills were full of pork legislation that lined the pockets of politicians and the elites and did not actually help anyone. Moreover, we don't talk about in this video, Mr. Beat does not mention jailing pro-lifers, Biden's DOJ jailing pro-lifers for praying outside of abortion clinics, does not mention holding the January 6 people hostage without giving them a proper trial, does not mention the shot mandates, does not mention the mandates for using pronouns and things like that. So there were meaningful ways in which Biden tyrannically pushed the country to the left. None of that gets mentioned. He says, oh, Biden was to the left just like Richard Nixon was to the left, who was a Republican, by signing an Inflation Reduction Act or Jobs Creation Act, which most of the jobs created under the Biden administration went to illegal aliens, did not go to Americans. So Mr. Beat here is obfuscating how far to the left Biden was and trying to make him sound like a moderate. Let's continue.
The Biden administration went after Big Pharma to lower prescription drug costs and went after big tech monopolies. Heck, he even became the first president to join workers on strike.
A strike that he helped create because of the poor economic conditions under his economic leadership.
Still, while the economy overall was strong,
the economy overall was strong? What is Mr. Beat smoking? This is what leads me to believe, and I put that in my comment below that I'm going to talk about, that Mr. Beat is essentially, he's either a younger boomer or an older Gen Xer, where he probably was wealthy enough to survive the Biden administration relatively unscathed, so he does not actually have a boots on the ground, real American perspective on what the Biden economy was like, despite the economy being strong. For whom was it strong? For the tech workers that got laid off? For the oil workers that lost their jobs as soon as he shut down the Keystone Pipeline? For the car manufacturers who were losing their jobs to foreign competitors when car factories moved abroad? I am having a hard time imagining what sector of the economy experienced a strong, what sector of American life experienced a strong economy. Most likely Wall Street bankers or other rich investors, or people like him who I wonder, I can't prove this for a fact, but I wonder have connections with Blackstreet or Vanguard or any of those other investment bank institutions, because those would be the only slice of people in this country who thrived under Biden, those who were already rich enough to not care. Again, that leads me to believe that Mr. Beat personally is probably a coastal elite. He's probably like a 45 or 47-year-old man living in Seattle or Oregon or somewhere of that nature who's probably got enough money to not care how badly Biden screwed up this country. But his perspective is out of touch with the majority of Americans, which is why his candidate, or the person I think he voted for, lost the popular vote. Let's continue.
Wealth inequality had only gotten worse, with just a small number of billionaires increasingly using their power to influence politics. So yeah, Biden was old and unpopular, but it's all good because his main political opponent was almost as old and unpopular as he was. Uh-oh, we got a rematch. Guess who's back? Donald's back. Donald Trump remained an extremely controversial figure in American politics, and he now faced not one, not two, not three, but 4 criminal indictments. New York charged Trump for faking his business records in order to hide hush money paid to an adult film actress named Stormy Daniels to cover up an alleged affair he had with her. A jury found him guilty, making him the first American president to ever become a convicted felon.
Right, and you have to understand how badly the Democrats have governed, that we would rather vote to give launch codes to a felon over having another Democrat run this country. When your party is in such disrepair you can't beat a convicted felon, you need to reevaluate your policy positions.
Next, the federal government charged Trump with stealing classified documents after he left office. Here's a famous photo of some of them sitting in his bathroom. The United States charged Trump with breaking the Espionage Act, making false statements, and obstructing justice. Oh, but the feds weren't done yet. They then charged...
Now, are we going to talk about Biden's document scandal? because if you're going to be a fair and objective poster of this video, also mention Biden's, and mention that the resulting investigation done by Mr. Hur proved that Biden had mental decline. And so that's why he wasn't charged, because he was in mental decline. We're not going to mention that. We're just going to skip over that, right? And we're also not going to mention the fact that Biden was a vice president when he obtained classified documents, which he did not have the right to declassify, because when he had those documents, he was not fully the president. He was just the vice. Whereas Trump was fully the president when he took possession of those documents, meaning he did have the legal right to declassify that. Mr. Beat's not going to cover that because, again, it does not support the narrative he's trying to create.
Trump with attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. And finally, Georgia charged Trump with organizing a conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in the state. Whew, did I get it all? Despite facing dozens of felonies and decades of potential prison time, Trump decided to run for president a fourth time. Critics of Trump said he seemed to only be running for three main reasons: to keep his fortune, to stay out of prison, and to get revenge on his enemies. Due to Trump's involvement with the January 6th Capitol attack.
Due to his involvement with the attack, he did not attack anyone. He literally, I remember that day clearly. He sent out a tweet saying, be peaceful, be patriotic, and then he sent out one saying that they need to go home. He did not partake in the attack. Again, Mr. Beat's not going to talk about how Muriel Browser and or Nancy Pelosi declined to have enough National Guardsmen there. We're not going to talk about that at all. We're simply going to talk about Trump, even though Trump didn't physically attack anyone or order anyone to be attacked. But Mr. Beat says, oh, Trump's involvement. Actually, Nancy Pelosi is the one who's more complicit in this. So Mr. Beat's not going to talk about that then because it doesn't bolster his narrative.
Many states tried to get him off the ballot. However, the Supreme Court ruled this unconstitutional in the case Trump v. Anderson. Trump's fans remained astoundingly loyal to him, viewing any...
Astoundingly loyal. Why is it astounding? We didn't just support him because, oh, we like Trump. In fact, I would tell you probably a lot of people who voted for Trump probably personally would not get along with him. They liked his policy. You see, Mr. Beat is trying to make it seem as though those that support Trump only do so because of emotion or because, oh, it's astounding. No, they don't want illegal aliens over the border. They don't want their children being mutilated by perverts in the public school system. They don't want forced injections, and they don't want jobs going overseas that they need to feed their families. Pretty basic stuff here. I don't see how he doesn't cover any of the legitimate reasons why someone would support Trump. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll concede. There are people out there who are blind Trump supporters who, whenever he's making a politically bad decision, which he has done so, Amy Coney Barrett's an example I can think of, they don't think of that, and they'll say, oh, well, trust the plan, it's 5D chess or whatever. There are those people out there, but you know what? On the Democrat side, you also have the blue anon people who believe everything a Democrat does is right. So rather than talk about the two extremes, why don't we talk about the reasons, the actual practical policy reasons that people voted for Trump? Let's see if in the rest of this video he talks about that.
Accusation against Trump as more evidence that anyone they didn't like was out to get him.
You're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
Don't worry, he was just joking, I think. Although many Americans didn't think he was, they, legit thought he wanted to be a dictator and get rid of the Constitution. Trump once again campaigned on border security, while also calling for massive deportations of undocumented immigrants and even...
See, again, there's that propaganda term, undocumented immigrants. They are illegal alien invaders. The word alien is a legal term, meaning someone who belongs to another country. They are invading because in order for them to get in this country without our country's permission, they had to either sneak in through a tunnel or float over here or somehow cut through a border or jump over something. They had to commit some act of breaking and entering to get in here. And I guarantee you, if someone broke into Mr. Beat's house, he would not say, oh, you're an undocumented guest. Here's a couch for you to lay on. No, he'd call the police and tell them to get out. So it's hypocritical for people like him to try to soften the blow of illegal immigration by, oh, it's just undocumented. That shows his left-leaning bias.
Legal immigrants. He also called for higher tariffs and bringing back the spoils system to reward loyalists with government jobs. Because both Trump
and actually he ended up slashing government jobs. You see how well your prediction played out.
and Biden were weak candidates. They both faced opponents within their own political party when trying to get renominated.
Trump was not a weak candidate. He won his primaries overwhelmingly. And to be fair, Biden was not a weak candidate either. He won his primaries overwhelmingly as well.
Notable folks who challenged Biden for the nomination were Dean Phillips, a U.S. representative from Minnesota, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the son of Robert F. Kennedy, whose own presidential campaign was cut short in 1968 after he was assassinated. Like his father, RFK Jr. generally leaned to the left politically, but had controversial views on vaccines and public health. On the Republican side, Trump's biggest two opponents were Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and Nikki Haley, who served as ambassador to the United Nations during Trump's first term. Meh, they didn't stand much of a chance. Trump was as popular as ever. He chose J.D. Vance.
Right, so you just contradicted yourself. You said that Trump was a weak candidate, but then you said Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis did not stand a chance because Trump was as popular as ever. Make it make sense, dude.
A U.S. Senator from Ohio, as his running mate. After Biden became the presumptive nominee for the Democrats, RFK Jr. carried on his campaign as an independent, with Nicole Shanahan, a wealthy philanthropist from California, as his running mate. RFK Jr. attracted a passionate following, consistently polling between 8 and 10%. It was a unique coalition featuring both former Democrats and former Republicans who all generally didn't trust the government. However, by the summer of 2024, RFK Jr.'s campaign had lost momentum. That summer began with the first major debate between Biden and Trump. Biden notably struggled during it, trailing off at times, giving confusing answers, and saying things like,
"We finally beat Medicare."
Oh yeah, his debate performance didn't convince many voters that he could handle the most difficult job in the world for 4 more years. After this, many Democrats called for Biden to drop out of the race, and to the shock of many Americans, he did just that. On July 21st, just 107 days before the election, he announced on social media that he was withdrawing his bid for re-election and endorsing his vice president, Kamala Harris, to be president. For Biden, it was Jover. A week before that, a man from the roof of a nearby building fired multiple shots of bullets at Donald Trump as he spoke at a rally near Butler, Pennsylvania. Trump survived the assassination attempt, though one of the bullets hit his right ear. The bullets killed one audience member and critically injured 2 others. The dramatic event ended up making Trump look heroic. I mean, look.
And like the vault is free. I gain more value out of the vault than like this freaking $4,000
here.
Look at that photograph. Look at that photograph.
So I will agree with Mr. Beat here. This was an iconic photograph. It's one for the history books. So I'll give him that.
It was immediately iconic. It was the most serious attempt to kill a president or presidential candidate since the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan in 1981. On September 15th, another man tried to assassinate Trump while he golfed in Florida. By that time, RFK Jr. had suspended his campaign to endorse Trump. Whoa, this arguably gave a boost to Trump's campaign. Meanwhile, Democrats all pretty much went along with Kamala Harris.
Democrats all pretty much went along with Kamala Harris. I'm not sure that happened the way Mr. Beat is saying it did. Are we going to talk about the fact that Kamala did not actually primary for the position? When Joe stepped down, what should have happened is the Democratic Party should have taken a few more weeks to have people actually campaign, and then from there, the delegates could vote. But basically, Kamala was coronated instead of actually running for the position. And that caused, within some in the Democratic Party, palpable frustration. But let's continue.
As the next logical choice to run for president now that Biden had dropped out, she chose Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, as her running mate. The Harris-Walz ticket breathed new life into the Democratic Party. At the only debate between Harris and Trump, Harris performed much better than Biden. Now it was Trump who was...
How did she perform much better than Biden? Yes, Biden was incoherent and she could at least finish a sentence. I'll give her that. But everything was, I grew up in a middle-class family and abortion, abortion, abortion. She never actually answered questions. And while I will concede that Trump's debate performance here was weak, he kind of seemed rattled and distracted, he redeemed himself at the end of the debate. But let's continue with this analysis.
Rambling and giving confusing answers, saying stuff like,
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Actually, that's part of their of Haitian culture, so he's not wrong there. I don't know why that's so controversial to say. Now, I did laugh out loud during that moment of the debate. It was hilarious, but let's just think about this. The Democrats have governed so badly that we would rather give launch codes to a felon who rambled about dogs and cats being eaten than to a Democrat. And give him the popular vote, too. That should give Democrats pause to realize their positions are just that bad, that out of touch with the American people.
They're eating the pets.
Despite a weaker debate performance, Trump continued to be...
Yes, despite a weaker debate performance, and I agree, his debate performance against Kamala was weaker than his debate performance against Biden. I'll concede that, but his ending was strong. He said, she's been there for 3.5 years. Why hasn't she done it? Mentioning the fact that people think that, oh, Kamala is going to come bring change. She could have brought change already, and she didn't. His ending made up for his failures in the beginning and middle of that debate. Go rewatch that debate. By the end, he had it wrapped up, which is why right after that debate, polls showed him gaining momentum, not losing it.
A marketing genius with notable publicity stunts to troll Kamala Harris. Trump also gave more long-form, unscripted interviews on non-traditional media, on podcasts and YouTube videos. You've heard of YouTube, haven't you? Not only that, Trump also had the richest man in the world now on his side, Elon Musk, who spent hundreds of millions of dollars and used Twitter, which he now owned, to help Trump win. This was the first presidential election in which artificial intelligence, or AI, played a significant role in the campaigns. So many AI-generated images made the rounds on social media, fooling many people. In the final days of her campaign,
So are we not going to talk about the artificially intelligent generated images that showed the Secret Servicemen cheering when Trump had his fist up after getting shot, trying to make it seem like it was a happy event? There were left-leaning people who used artificial intelligence to make propaganda photos to try to make Trump look guilty or look less than what he is. So we need to put the shoe on both feet here. We need to be balanced in our perspective. He's only showing propaganda created by right-wing people to make left-wing people look worse than they are, but he's not showing any of the left-wing propaganda. That's one of my main problems. This dude is clearly, again, like I said, I peg him as like a 47-year-old, sort of, probably around that age range, like getting near 50, rich, out-of-touch person who just thinks, oh, well, Republicans are just dumb little farmers who don't know anything. Anyway, but let's continue.
Kamala Harris seemed to be reaching out more to former Republicans and abandoning more left-leaning Democrats who were not happy with Biden's position on the Gaza war.
Seemed to be abandoning them. She catered to them. Their foreign policy supported these people. Are we not going to talk about ways in which the Biden administration in some way stymied aid to Israel? Because he stymied, didn't greenlight them being able to clear out Gaza, started demanding a ceasefire as well instead of letting them wipe out Hamas. Again, I'm not taking a side in that conflict, but the Biden-Harris administration did a lot of appeasing to the radical Islamicist wing of their party. They weren't just sitting out there governing as moderates trying to tell the radicals to calm down. They were not doing that. So don't twist history.
Many remained cautiously hopeful that she could be the first female president.
But we are not going back. We are not going back. Not going back. We're not going back.
And here are the results. Oh, we went back all right. Donald Trump won, becoming the 47th president in American history. Trump received 312 electoral votes and 49.8% of the popular vote. Harris got 226 electoral votes and 48.3% of the popular vote. Trump became only the second president in American history to be elected to 2 non-consecutive terms in office. The other being Grover Cleveland. Don't you remember, punk? J.D. Vance became the 50th vice president in American history. And this is very important. He became the first vice president with facial hair since Charles Curtis, who left office nearly 100 years.
And Charles Curtis was actually Native American. So Kamala Harris is not the first minority to occupy the vice presidency. It was actually this guy here, just as a little FYI.
Prior, Trump became the oldest president ever elected in American history as soon as he was sworn in, breaking the record set just 4 years prior. So yeah, Trump didn't go to prison, he went back to the White House. And despite his flaws, it was still worth it for many Americans to give him another chance. At the very least, this was another chance to stick it to the establishment. Populism was back, man.
All right, now let's go down to my comments, my critiques on this video. I stated, I wonder which way the poster of this video leans. Let's see. He calls illegal alien invaders undocumented, calls the Biden economy strong, didn't mention Lake and Raleigh or Tren de Aragua, didn't mention how many billions of dollars of military equipment Biden gave the Taliban, didn't mention the DOJ jailing pro-lifers, didn't mention the shot mandates. He mentioned Trump's weak debate performance against Kamala, but omits his strong closing statement where he said she's been there for 3.5 years, why hasn't she done it? Which resulted in him gaining in the polls, didn't mention Kamala's lack of running a primary, like she was coordinated, and didn't mention Kamala's condescending black accent. Remember when she said, "You better thank a union member," and didn't mention the expensive EV mandate. And I said, no wonder you people lost badly. That out-of-touch coastal elitism is distasteful to hardworking people. And rather than him responding to anything of what I said, he said, one day you'll look back on this comment and be embarrassed. Why? Why should I be embarrassed? Name one thing one critique of your video up here that's not factually accurate. Even this guy down here, nothing really 6680 seems to be on my side. Anyway, let me know what you think of this propaganda video in the comments below. Have a good day.